Gift Book of Fairy Tales. Dean's Gift Book of Fairy Tales contains Cinderella, Babes in the Wood, Sleeping Beauty, Puss in Boots, Tom Thumb, Hansel and Gretel, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. Illustrated by Janet and Anne Graham Johnstones. Published by Dean and Son Limited. Copyright 1967. Hi everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'd like to say hi to all of our friends out there. Hi everybody. Hi Undine. Hi Olive. Hi Linda. Hi Shane. Hi Matthew. Hi Renee. Hi Ragni, Samir, Braxton, Robin, and everybody else. Today we will be reading Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there lived a very rich merchant. He had a beautiful house surrounded by gardens full of flowers and rare birds. He had 4 sons and 3 daughters, who had everything for which they could possibly wish. The 2 eldest daughters, Miranda and Rosina, were very vain and lazy, and were fond of silk and satin dresses and jewels. The youngest daughter was her father's pet. She was so lovely that she was called Beauty, and was industrious and kind and loving to her father and her sisters, and all who came near her. One day, the beautiful palace in which they lived was destroyed by a dreadful fire. All their fine things were spoiled, and the gardens ruined. Then, a few days after the fire, a messenger arrived bringing the news that the 2 of the merchant's ships full of precious cargo had gone down in a great storm, and the 3rd one had not been heard of for many months. The merchant was now very poor, and he and his family moved into a tiny cottage. His daughters had to do the cooking and cleaning, and Miranda and Rosina hated this and grumbled all day long about having to work and wear coarse clothes instead of silks and satins. After they had lived like this for about a year, the merchant heard that his 3rd ship, which he had thought lost, had arrived safely to its destination, and he determined to take a journey and find out if this news was true. Miranda asked her father to bring back 6 satin dresses, and Rosina asked for a necklace of rubies. When Beauty was asked what she would like, she said, "If you come back safely, dear father, that will satisfy me." But the merchant wanted her to have a present, so Beauty asked him to bring a red rose. The merchant set out on his long journey, thinking of the gold which the valuable cargo would yield. But when he reached the end of his journey, he found that the captain had sold the cargo and sailed away with the money to a distant country. The poor merchant set off for home again, thinking of the disappointment of his children when they should learn of his new misfortune. He had not ridden far when he saw a wonderful sight in front of him. A castle of shining gold, and surrounded with a large garden in which the most lovely flowers bloomed. As there was nobody in sight, the merchant dismounted from his horse and walked through the garden. He saw a rose arbor covered with the most beautiful blossoms of every shade. He remembered his promise to Beauty, and, selecting a magnificent rose, he broke it off. Scarcely had he done so when a tremendous roar just behind him nearly frightened him to death. Turning around, he beheld a most horrible beast with a head like a fierce animal and a man's body. The beast was foaming with rage, and two large red eyes glared at the poor merchant, whose knees trembled under him. "What are you doing with my roses?" thundered the dreadful beast, gnashing its teeth. "Oh, forgive me, sir," cried the frightened merchant. "I did not think your highness would mind my picking just one rose. It was for my daughter Beauty." He then told the beast all his troubles, and of the promise he had made to his youngest daughter. "I will forgive you only on one condition," said the beast. "That is that one of your daughters will come and live with me." The poor merchant was very frightened at this, as he was afraid if he refused, the beast would kill him, and he was so fond of his children that he could not bear that one of them should put themselves under the power of this dreadful creature. At last, however, he promised to go home and tell his sons and daughters what the beast said. And if one of them would not come, the merchant promised to return himself and be the beast's servant. When the merchant arrived at his home, he found his family waiting anxiously for him and eagerly to see what he had brought them. He told them of all his adventures and of the dreadful trouble he got into by picking the rose. The merchant's sons were very distressed and did not want their father to go back to the awful monster. The sisters declared that if Beauty had not asked for such a ridiculous present, none of these misfortunes would have happened. At last, however, Beauty said she would go and live with the beast in order that her dear father might stop at home in safety. Of course, at first, her father and brothers would not hear of such a thing, but at last Beauty persuaded her father to let her go, and the next day she and her father set out. The merchant and Beauty passed through the gardens without meeting anybody and into the castle, where they found preparations made for them as if they had been expected. A magnificent banquet was spread in the banquet hall, to which they sat down with much pleasure, as they were tired and hungry after their journey. Beauty was so charmed with all she saw that she was beginning to feel quite happy and had almost forgotten the beast. Just then they heard a tramp, tramp coming along the passage, and Beauty clung to her father in terror. In a few minutes the beast entered and said in a growling voice, "Good evening, old man. Good evening, Beauty." Beauty was very frightened, but she said, "Good evening," politely. The beast then asked the merchant if Beauty had been willing to come. The merchant said yes, which seemed to soothe the beast a little. "I shall expect you to go first thing tomorrow morning. But never venture near my castle again, or it will be the worse for you," the beast told the merchant. The next day, after saying farewell to Beauty, the poor old man started for home, full of grief at leaving his daughter behind, perhaps never to see her again. Beauty wandered about in the gardens, smelling the beautiful flowers and thinking of her home, and her father, and her brothers and sisters. As she passed a fountain, she seemed to hear a voice say, "Be cheerful, dear Beauty, for your lot is not as hard as you think, and one day you will be very happy. Only be kind to the poor beast, however rough he may seem to be." Beauty looked around to see who had spoken, but saw no one. But on a tree just above her, a little canary was singing loudly. Beauty then wandered through the rooms of the castle, admiring the furniture, which was all of solid gold, and the beautiful dresses and jewels she found in her room. She did not see the beast until the evening, and trembled as she heard his heavy footsteps coming along the passage. But the beast seemed quiet, gentle, and said, "Good evening, dear Beauty," and asked her what she had been doing all day. He talked so nicely that Beauty quite forgot to be frightened. She sang to him and played one of his lovely musical instruments. Later he asked her if she was happy at the castle. "Oh yes, Beast," said Beauty. "I have everything I can possibly want. But I feel rather sad and lonely without my sisters and brothers and my dear father." "Dear Beauty," said the Beast, "will you marry me and live here always as the mistress of this beautiful place?" "Oh no!" cried poor Beauty in horror. The Beast sighed and said, "Well, good night, Beauty. I hope you will have pleasant dreams." For some months Beauty lived on at the castle, where she had lovely needlework to do if she felt industrious, musical instruments to play upon, birds to sing to her, and wonderful flowers to pluck when she felt inclined. Every evening the Beast had supper with her, and before saying good night, asked her if she would marry him. Each time Beauty said no. He seemed to become sadder and sadder, until Beauty felt quite sorrow for him. During this time, Beauty often used to think of her father and wonder how he was and what he was doing. One day she happened to look in a magic mirror, and there she seemed to see her father lying ill in bed. The next day she was looking so sad that the Beast said, "What ails you, dear Beauty?" "I long to see my father again and my brothers and sisters," said Beauty. "Please, Beast, let me go home for just a little while, and I promise I will come back after 2 months." The Beast was very much grieved at this request, as he loved Beauty so much. But at last he said she might go if she would promise faithfully to come back at the end of 2 months. "If you do not return," continued the poor Beast, "you may find me dead." He then gave her a ring and told her to blow on it directly if she was ready to return to him, when she would immediately find herself back at the castle. The next morning Beauty said farewell to the Beast, who was looking really sad, and set out on a long journey to her old home. When at last she arrived, her sisters and brothers hugged her and kissed her. They were so delighted to see her once again. Then Beauty ran up to her father's room, and tears ran down her cheeks when she saw how ill he looked. He had been worrying about Beauty and had missed her cheerful and loving company. But he was so overjoyed that she had come back home that he soon recovered. Beauty's father asked her all sorts of questions, as he wanted to know what she had been doing all this time. She also wanted to hear about the Beast, and if he had treated her kindly. After Beauty had told her father all he wanted to know, she showed Miranda and Rosina the beautiful presents she had bought for them, satin and silk dresses and jewels. They had also brought all manner of precious things for her brothers, and a chest full of gold for her father. The 2 months full of happiness passed very quickly, and Beauty began to think of her promise to the Beast. But her brothers begged her to stay a little longer, so she put off going back to the castle day after day. One night, Beauty had a dreadful dream, in which she saw the Beast lying ill on the ground under a large tree, and heard a voice crying, "You have broken your promise, Beauty, and see what has happened." Poor Beauty was dreadfully frightened and determined to go back at once, so she blew on the magic ring and immediately found herself back in the Beast's castle. She wandered from room to room all day, longing to see the Beast and to tell him how sorry she was that she had broken her promise and that she could not find him anywhere. At last evening came, but the Beast still did not appear. Beauty ran out into the garden, weeping and calling his name. Presently she came to a tree, like the one she had seen in her dreams, and to her horror saw the Beast lying face down, apparently dead. Beauty ran and fetched some water to try and revive him, and at last he opened his eyes. He was delighted to see Beauty again, and told her that he would have supper with her that night. After supper, the Beast asked as usual, "Dear Beauty, will you marry me?" And to her surprise, Beauty answered, "Yes, dear Beast, I do love you very much." As she said this, there was a tremendous flash of lightning and a great peal of thunder that shook the castle. And lo, instead of an ugly Beast, Beauty saw a most handsome prince standing beside her. The prince was dressed in suit of satin trimmed with gold. He smiled at Beauty and knelt before her, then thanked her for breaking the spell which had been cast over him by a wicked witch. The next day the prince sent for Beauty's father, sisters, and brothers, and told them that she had promised to marry him. Not many days after, there was a grand wedding at the castle, and there was great excitement as guests arrived from near and far. All day long the joy bells pealed of the wedding of the handsome Beast and his beautiful bride, Beauty, who lived happily ever after. The end. That was a lovely story. I love the outfit of the Beast, and beauty. Beautiful satin and silks. I love the hairstyles that they had. And oh, those beautiful roses, really red. He had a lovely castle and garden. Do go through all the pages and take a look at the pictures as they are wonderfully drawn. Thank you everybody for joining us for this reading of Beauty and the Beast. I hope you join us again next time. Thank you, Undine. Thank you, Olive. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Braxton. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you again. Bye. Thank you.